Welcome to RPG Time. Today I'm covering Obscure, one of my favorite games on the PS2. Obscure is a great survival horror game with an awesome co-op mode, and a fun yet simple story about a creepy-ass principal doing weird experiments to the students. The game was developed by Hydrovision Entertainment. It was released on October 1st, 2004. In PAL regions, and on April 6, 2005 in North American regions, on the PS2, original Xbox, and PC. This video is going to be covering the PS2 version of the game. Now let's get into the story. Kenny Matthews, a jock and popular school basketball player, stays late in the school gym to shoot some hoops. Ashley Thompson, his girlfriend, calls him and diverts his attention from the mysterious figure running off with his gym bag. Kenny pursues the thief and is led behind an iron gate, leading to an old mansion. In the basement, he finds a secret passageway that leads to an underground corridor. He discovers glass cases with plants and other experimental subjects. He opens a sealed door at the end of the hall to find Dan, a student who has been used as a guinea pig for the experiments and locked in the underground lab. Kenny convinces Dan to leave with him, but they are attacked by a giant mutated creature. Dan gives his life to allow Kenny to escape. Hurrying up the ladder at the end of the corridor, Kenny is locked in by the mysterious figure. The next day, Ashley informs Kenny's sister, Shannon Matthews, that he stood her up the other night. Shannon says that Kenny didn't come home either. Both girls concur that Kenny must be in trouble, and they need to find a way to aid him. They visit Josh Carter, the school videographer and would-be detective, to ask him if he knows of Kenny's whereabouts. He does not, but suggests that they stay after school to look for him. After everyone has left and all the doors are locked, they begin their investigation. They encounter the monsters and find their biology teacher, Walden, who smashes a window, revealing the monsters are weak to sunlight. Walden claims he knows nothing about what's going on and implores the teens to go find Principal Herbert Friedman. Walden then leaves after vaguely claiming he has something to do. At Walden's suggestion, they go looking for the principal at his office in the classroom wing of the school. They find Stan Jones, the school's stoner and slack student. They ask if he knows where Kenny is. He does not, but upon hearing Kenny's missing, he decides to join them in their search. In Friedman's office, they discover that he has a twin brother, Leonard Friedman. They also find a note informing the janitor that Principal Friedman is in his office at the school library. Upon meeting him in school, the four inform Herbert Friedman of the monsters plaguing the campus and of Kenny's disappearance. He then informs them that he will find Kenny and that they should leave immediately. He tells them to speak with Mr. Garrison, the school janitor, to let them out. When they visit the janitor, he has been ripped apart and is in a bloody heap on the floor. One of the students takes the liberty of watching security tapes in his office. They see Kenny still alive and decide to rescue him. They also spot Elizabeth Lucy Wiskson, the school nurse, pleading for help as she is trapped in the nurse's office. They travel through the cafeteria wing to get to her and get some answers. When they find Nurse Wickson, she appears to be out of her mind. However, in her mindless babble, she reveals that Herbert has been doing something unsafe. The students use a hand wheel they found in the infirmary to access a hidden door in the administration block, which is now in complete ruins. They learn that there are secret basements hidden underneath the school and figure out that's where Kenny must be. They encounter Walden again, frantically searching for Friedman. They inform him that they've seen Friedman in the library and that they need a key to the auditorium. Walden gives them the key and runs out. In the school amphitheater, they find class pictures spanning decades on the walls. In each one, Principal Friedman appears to be the same age. They fire up the theater screen and watch the reel of film they found. It reveals the Friedman brothers doing tests on human subjects, and the subjects mutating into monsters. It also shows Leonard Friedman injecting himself and watching the skin on his face rapidly changing into something grotesque. The students defeat a monster known as the Queen, then use a ladder under an elevator shaft to access the basement. While climbing down the ladder, the elevator falls. While in the basement, they fight through and manage to reach the prison where Kenny is being held. Upon walking in, Principal Friedman unleashes a toxin, rendering them all unconscious. When they wake, the surviving students are all behind bars. One of them discovers a metal hook left in their cell by the back wall and hands it to Kenny, who reaches to the circuit breaker and pulls on the cords, unlocking the cell doors. Kenny then informs them that they have been injected with a serum, and if they are exposed to light for too long, they will mutate. Kenny suggests to meet up with Miss Whiskskin, believing she can help them out. They use a big pair of bolt cutters to retrieve their items and weapons back. The students then fight their way back to the surface, on campus. They find Miss Wixon all bloody and beaten. The students once again ask Miss Wixon for help, telling her they have been infected. On her dying breath, she reveals to them that there is an antidote that can save them, and that is hidden inside Friedman's secret lab, which can be accessed through the garden entrance of the basements. Having no other leads, the students decide to cut down all big padlocks on the school ground with the bolt cutters they stole. They reach the dorms, which have been abandoned for decades as there were rumors of people disappearing there. While there, they discover a safe with Alan Gardner's diary and library office key inside. In the diary, Alan reveals that Herbert had a twin brother named Leonard Friedman, who went missing. He reveals that Leonard and Miss Wixon were married, and that the two, along with Herbert, were at least 100 years old. The Friedman brothers managed to make themselves immortal and immune to aging after experimenting with a flower they brought back from Africa, Mortafila. They kidnapped and tested the serum on the students. Watching a film reel earlier in the game showed that Leonard tried testing the serum on himself, but he got horribly mutated. Alan points the students to the direction of Friedman's lab, revealing that it's behind a big door in the basement that can be opened by finding 4 statues with hidden mechanisms on them that can be used to open the door. Alan attempted to find out what was behind the door before he himself became a guinea pig of the school headmaster. With the newly acquired key, the students break into Friedman's hidden office and retrieve one of the statues needed to open the big door, and get some reels they decide to go look at. On their way back to the courtyard, they encounter Mr. Walden again. They tell him that there is an antidote to the infection, and when they show him the map to the basement, Mr. Walden becomes crazy, coughs up a huge amount of spores, revealing he is long infected. In a crazed state, Mr. Walden takes off with the basement map and locks the students in the library. However, they quickly find their way out. After watching the reels, they find a code that they use on a gate in the northwest part of the school to enter the gardens behind the school. The path leads them to the same house that Kenny encountered the previous night. They enter the basement through there and use the statues they have collected to open up the big door. Walden is there in time to see the big door open and enters it. He threatens Herbert Friedman, who is holding a briefcase containing the antidote, with a gun. Friedman refuses to give it to him, claiming Walden is too infected to be cured. Walden, clearly losing his mind, shoots Friedman in the chest and takes his briefcase. Just after he injects himself with the antidote, he is impaled by a horribly mutated Leonard Friedman. Leonard then tosses Walden's body around the room before slamming it into the door. The survivors arrive to the scene just in time to see Herbert die from his chest wound. This enrages Leonard, who decides to attack the students. The students, however, shoot Leonard's roots, which are holding the roof and acting as support beams. By destroying some of the roots, the roof begins to collapse, crushing Leonard and making the way for the students to reach the ground floor. It is revealed that Leonard was situated right beneath the gym. The survivors inject themselves with the antidote, but then Leonard is revealed to be still alive. The students continue to defend themselves long enough for the sunlight to completely burn Leonard's skin and organs off, leaving behind only a skeleton. With his death, the roots dry out, and the students are finally safe. Obscure features two endings, the good and the bad ending. Starting with the good ending. So this ending is only obtainable if all 5 students are surviving at the end. While Kenny and Ashley make up and Josh and Shannon take a breather, Stan recovers the briefcase. While bending down to get it, the Walden monster rises above to attack. Stan jumps back and pierces its head with a bullet. Now for the bad ending. This ending is always obtained if at least one student dies. The currently playing character walks away in the gym after injecting themselves with the cure. A short scene shows a funeral happening for the victims of Leafmore. However, the coffin suddenly emits a dark cloud of smoke, suggesting their corpse is still infected with the virus and could infect it to the funeral attenders. Now, the story of Obscure is not very deep, but it didn't need to be, and the story serves the purpose it needs to for the game. Most of the important lore is given to the player through various notes you find in the school, and the couple of brief cutscenes. I think the concept of the story with how the principal was doing these experiments on the students to try and cure his mutated brother was really cool. I liked learning about the origin of the plant Mortafila, and how the brothers were using the plants for their unethical experiments to extend humans' lifespans. The story is very brief and moves along at a fast pace, which complements the tense survival horror gameplay. The characters are very basic too. It's like a slasher movie cast where most of the characters are bare bones and barely developed. Kenny is the jock, Shannon is the smart girl, Josh is into journalism, Ashley can fight real good, and Stanley is a stoner. That's literally all the game gives you for the character traits. And personalities, aside from the written backstories in the menu for each of them. This works for the game since the story is more focused on what's happening at the school than any character really. Now, I didn't think this story was revolutionary at all, or that the characters were great, but it was fun and enjoyable, and that's all it needed to be. Now moving on to the gameplay section. Obscure's gameplay is a typical survival horror experience with some unique aspects to the game. The isometric angles, puzzles, tank controls, and combat present in the game are typical of the genre. The way Obscure spices it up is with the variety of characters available to play, special abilities for each character, having a team of 2 characters that you can switch between, a 2-player co-op mode, a mechanic solely for taping flashlights to weapons, and a permadeath mechanic. Let's start with the characters and their special abilities. The first character you play as is Kenny, whose special ability is to run, which is alright. Definitely not the most exciting ability, but it has uses, especially for the final boss at the end. After Kenny is imprisoned, you get access to 3 new characters off the bat. The first being Josh, whose special ability is to see if anything needs to be done in a room. That is indicated through his dialogue. It's useful when you're checking rooms since you can make sure nothing's missing. Second, we have Shannon, Kenny's sister, whose special ability is to give advice. Now at first this seems like it would be completely useless, but to my surprise her advice is extremely detailed, and she will explain the puzzles in the game to you, which is incredibly helpful, and I haven't seen a similar mechanic in any other horror game. Next, we got Kenny's girlfriend, Ashley, which has one of the best special abilities: increased damage and a special melee attack. Then, after a bit of playing the game, you find Stan, the final playable character, who can pick locks without needing the special tool for it. I'd say Ashley and Shannon have the best special abilities since they are the most useful, with the rest being okay to kind of unnecessary, like Stan's special ability that can be done with an item by any character, which is needed in case Stan dies, but still, it's a bit lazy. Now in single player mode, you have a group of 2 characters that you can switch between with a press of a button, while in co-op mode, each character is controlled by a separate player. An annoying part of co-op mode is how the camera works. It only follows the first player, so the second player constantly gets left out of view unless they stay moving with the first player at all times. Otherwise, co-op mode functions well. It's a very unique experience where you need to be careful and approach every room strategically, unless you want to die. When a player dies, you need to get a new character to be your partner, since there's permadeath. You can see where each character dies on the map so you can retrieve their items from their corpse if you miss them at first too. You can teleport to the gathering area, where the rest of your characters stay when not being used, to easily get another partner. The gathering area constantly changes once you go through the game. It's possible to only have one character remaining alive, which prevents you from doing co-op, and makes the game a lot more difficult. There's specific features in co-op that are great too, like the ability to give items to each other and heal each other, which comes into use a lot. That's it for co-op mode. I would recommend it to people. It's tons of fun, but it can get pretty difficult at times. Single player mode makes some aspects of the games like resource management easier, but makes combat a bit harder, since the NPCs aren't nearly as good as an actual player. Otherwise, it's the same game in single player, but you can just swap between 2 characters quickly, and don't have to worry about keeping your friend in camera. I personally played co-op most of the time with my dad or little brother. I prefer the mode since it's a lot more fun to me than single player, which is the typical survival horror experience. Now I wanted to talk about combat and the puzzles. I'll start with the puzzles, which are your run-of-the-mill horror game puzzles. You need to do a specific thing to open up a passageway or get an item which allows you to progress. An example would be the map puzzle, where you find 2 arrows and have to point them at the correct coordinates to access a key. There's not a lot of these puzzles, and they're not too difficult, especially if you have Shannon giving you advice for them. I liked how the puzzles weren't too cryptic, which a lot of horror games suffer from. Now, the combat. First, I wanted to talk about weapons. You start out with only melee, then pretty soon after you end up getting your first gun. Now, there's melee weapons, various pistols, a shotgun, and a laser. You get each weapon at different points in the game, with the laser being saved for very last. There's also additional weapons on New Game Plus too. The combat is very standard for the genre. You aim with a button, then tap a button to shoot, and you shine the flashlight with the left trigger when they are attached to your guns, at enemies to stun and damage them. Light is very important in combat. Without using flashlights, the enemies are way more difficult to kill. The enemies are weak to any source of light as well, like sunlight, so you can break windows to use natural light to kill enemies during daytime, which is pretty cool. There are 3 different levels of flashlights, with each level increasing in power. You can use duct tape, which you find throughout the game, to attach flashlights to your weapons. Any quality flashlight can be attached to any gun, but you require duct tape to do it, so keep an eye out for it. The flashlights are vital for dealing with the enemies, so make sure to use them during combat. Now, despite the gameplay being pretty standard for the genre, it's still a really fun and engaging game that any survival horror game will most likely love. The gameplay really shines during co-op for me, and I enjoyed the different ways the game changed up the standard survival horror formula with stuff like the flashlight mechanic and having multiple characters at once. I wanted to talk about the enemies and difficulty as well before concluding this section. The enemies are actually pretty difficult. They hit hard and fast. If you get caught in a bad situation with low resources, you're probably going to die. Some enemies just jump scare you out of nowhere as well, like this part in the hallway. You gotta be prepared for whatever. I also found that even on easy mode, the enemies are still pretty tough, so be wise by saving the game often so you don't end up losing everyone too fast. The enemy design is great too. I love the look of the fat woman who lays on the floor, the massive monsters around the school, and the monster that looks like the Demogorgon from Stranger Things, which I think definitely influenced the show's design. Now, I already mentioned that the enemies were hard, but the game overall is very difficult. Since the enemies, like I said, are strong, you can get caught in a bad situation like being crowded or getting attacked when you're low on resources, and you already die very easily. Now combine that with the permadeath mechanic and the fact that you need to find discs to be able to save your game, and the game becomes pretty damn difficult. I had to beat the game on easy first, then once I got better I played on normal for the second time through. I think the game was made to be difficult to make up for its short length, since if you know what to do, the game becomes very short, like 5 hours in total I'd say. Overall, this game is a great survival horror experience. It's short and sweet with some unique aspects to it like the co-op mode. I'd recommend this game to horror fans, especially Silent Hill and Resident Evil fans. Moving on, I want to talk about the extras. This game, like every survival horror game from this era, is packed with fun extras. So let's go over them. Starting with the lame stuff, which is the alternate outfits for all the characters. Each character has one alternate outfit, and you unlock it by having that character survive until the very end of the game. These aren't anything special. I like Shannon and Josh's the most. You can only see these in Special Mode, which is unlocked after beating the game. Special Mode is basically New Game Plus, and you have to play the game in this mode to use the outfits and the unlockable weapons, which I'll talk about right now. So there are 2 new weapons, which take the place of the bat and the second pistol you get in Friedman's office in Special Mode. These are the Morgenstein bat and the laser pistol, both of which are great, especially the laser pistol since it's powerful, and the laser is the best light source to use on enemies aside from natural sunlight in the game. The Morgenstein bat is more of a last resort type of weapon, because once you get guns, melee is pretty obsolete. You unlock the bat for completing the game on easy, and laser pistol for beating the game on normal. There's also 2 galleries to unlock, and some extra music, which is nice but not really important for me. That's it for the extras. I like the extra weapons, and the other stuff is okay. Now let's conclude this video. So on to the conclusion. This game's story is good and serves its purpose. The gameplay is awesome with some really unique mechanics, which makes it a great take on the genre. If you're looking for horror games that are co-op or just want a new horror game to play, Obscure is a great choice. That's it for this video. Stay tuned for the next video on a random PS1 Squaresoft game, or Pulsal 2, whatever I'm feeling.